On the eve of the world premiere for Long Distance Revolutionary in San Francisco, I had this conversation with Mumia, recorded by Noel Hanrahan at Prison Radio. Okay, live from Frackville, Pennsylvania. You're going to make that place, you're going to put that place on the map.
The question is, what kind of map?
I don't know if I want to be on that map. Hey, I hear there's an election coming up, so I thought we would discuss the Empire's 4-year ritual to elect a new corporate CEO.
Well, how about a temporary emperor?
That sounds even better. You know, to a large extent throughout American history, especially recent American history, presidential elections have been nothing more than political theater. Red states, blue states, we even have red ties and blue ties now. Or as our good buddy Gore Vidal has written, it's one-party politics answering to one corporate master. How disheartening is it for you to experience another imperial charade of an election?
It's profoundly so, especially because, you know, what you and I may consider the real issues facing people.
This call is from the State Correctional Institution at Mahanoy and is subject to monitoring and recording.
The economic struggle to survive, the very real struggle that parents have to educate their children, the quality of public schools in black and Latino and poor white communities. I mean, as you've noticed, I've talked about domestic stuff and not, say, stuff dealing with foreign affairs, overseas, or international. But it's all interrelated. It is a production. I mean, we need to call it the United States of Broadway because, you know, our politicians are just actors. They may be poor actors, but they are actors. And like many actors, you can't believe a damn thing they say. And to hear these guys, you know, I watched parts of the debate, the parts I could stomach. And it was like they were speaking in Klingon. I could barely understand what they were talking about.
That's right.
You know, people are hurting all over this country. And, you know, I know people are celebrating, at least in the White House, the 7.8 jobless figure, but in the African-American community, that figure approaches 15% or 20% in some communities. And we're living, not in the best of times, but for millions of us, in the worst of times.
As Mr. Dickens said.
Yeah.
You know, the war in Afghanistan is now America's longest war. Exactly. And it's not even an issue in the presidential campaign. The anti-war movement is nowhere to be found. It's moribund. And the world's super cop seems to operate unencumbered around the planet. How dangerous has this situation become, Mo?
It is worse than we could ever have dreamed. By that I mean, what we have is a kind of benign emperor. That is to say, you know, good-looking, smart, very intelligent. But I bet you that the people who cheered overseas in the Middle East when Barack Obama was elected president, they ain't cheering today. Far from it.
Yeah, I don't hear them.
We saw that in Libya. We saw that in Egypt a few weeks ago. You know, Pakistan is off the radar, but people are, you know, they're living in terror of daily drone attacks, you know.
Speaking of presidents, Noam Chomsky wrote, I know you're familiar with this quote, if the Nuremberg laws were applied in this country, then every post-war American president would have been hanged.
With no exception. With no exception. Absolutely. One of the books that I just sent you is Masters of War. Now, this covers about a century, right, of American interference in Latin America and its toppling of governments, its support for military dictatorships. We call them strongmen, you know, in diplomatic and journalistic language. But the kind of terror that we supported against working people who were trade unionists and students and nuns and priests, you know, people trying to work for a better life and daring to try to create their own life free from the influence of the empire. It beggars description. And Masters of War is one of the best books I've ever read on the subject. But, my God, I mean, most Americans, though, you know, we're worried about immigration, right? We're worried about illegals, as is the common phrase. What we don't put together is all of the repression that we supported during the last century. Well, what did that do? It spurred immigration. It drove people to try to find a safe haven in the world. in the heart of the empire, in New Rome.
You know, it's interesting. You always hear this term, you know, they're going to vote for the lesser of two evils. And, you know, we're always reminded that they're still voting for evil. If Romney beats Obama 3 years from now, will we really notice that much of a difference? Because I got to tell you, I don't notice that much of a difference from George Bush and Dick Cheney to these two guys.
Well, if you recall, a few weeks ago, well, maybe it was a few months ago, someone, it might have been Karl Rove or somebody from the former administration, paid Obama the ultimate compliment. They said, well, he's doing what we would have done. And it's the truth. He wasn't lying.
Yeah.
In fact, as I said about the drone wars, he's actually exceeded Bush, you know, on his best drone day.
Greatly exceeded, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, Bush would be proud. Dick Cheney can rest assured that the empire is in good brown hands.
Our good friend Cornel West loves to bring this up. Another issue that never comes up in either the presidential election or the general discourse of American government or the media is the real on-the-ground terrorism that exists in the country, also known as poverty. Moo, talk about this obvious exclusion in the country's dialogue and how it affects the ever-growing incarceration nation.
Well, you know what? When we think about poverty, we think about it, if at all, as an individual shortcoming, almost a spiritual shortcoming. We do that in this country, and the reason we don't talk about it is we're afraid it'll project that the empire is somehow imperfect when it comes to the lives and the welfare of average people. But, you know, there are tens of millions of people who live in poverty. There are tens of millions of people who go to bed hungry every day in the United States of America. And it shouldn't be a secret. We shouldn't be hiding the empire's secrets. We should be shouting at the top of our lungs about, as you say, the internal terror of hunger, of poverty, of want and need in the richest country in the history of humanity.
Very nice. How you feeling, man?
Fair to middling, as I always say. Healthy, as always. Pissed as usual. But you know, busy as hell, as you know.
That was a good lunch we had the last time I was there. It was a long and thoughtful ride back to New York City for me. It was again, it was another great time together in a very horrific place.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you know, we make the best of the worst, and I think that's the story of, you know, our ancestors in struggle. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, you know, all the people who, you know, rumbled against the empire of their age. And we have to do it, you know, we have to carry it on, to quote Assata Shakur. We have to pass it on, carry it on. That's our job. And as you know, Francis looks at us as kind of the sons of Howard Zinn.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of work to do.
I just got a letter from you today. It's back in LA and I haven't been able to open it up, but the work you did on this chapter 4 is just, it's stunning, absolutely stunning. And you know, I think we're kind of pushing each other back and forth, which is really, really nice. And you just gave me a big push, so I got to come back to the table with something big next time, because you definitely throwing fastballs, my friend.
Well, I thank you, and I hope you hit me with a few of them. You know, there's an old Rastafarian saying that iron sharpens iron. And, you know, Howard's is some pretty big shoes to fill. We may not fill them, but we'll damn sure try. And that means doing the hardest, doing the best, doing the truest, doing the most explosive writing we can do on something that's rarely written about: empire, imperialism, international terrorism against the people of the world.
Rarely written about.
We will do it.
Yeah, and we are doing it. And there hasn't been a person I've run this idea by, including Michael Parenti, who is going to be at the film tomorrow.
Well, I think that's great company. I mean, I loved his history on Julius Caesar, his alternative history. I mean, just brilliantly written, but brilliantly researched and brilliantly argued. So, and, you know, I love all this stuff.
Can you tell us a little bit about life now in the general population as opposed to the first hell you went through for 30 plus years?
Well, it's difficult to even conceive of it and talk about it because it's so different in many ways. And I think, you know, while I can kind of intellectually process it, my body has not gotten used to being around, say, 400 guys at one time or something, going to yard or going to chow, and there's about 300 guys walking by you. So, it's a learning process, and it takes some time, but we do the best we can with what we got, and it's different. I will say that it's different.
You were mentioning to me, I thought this was hilarious, that they look at you as the old head now. I mean, they've been looking at you as the old head for a while, which is kind of funny coming from because I know the two of us both feel like we're probably still 20, but how does it feel to be the elder statesman now?
I love it and I hate it. Because I'm like, well, damn, who are they talking to? I do think I'm still in my 20s, in my head, but I look in the mirror and I say, who is that geezer?
Hey, tomorrow, I got to give you a note here with the film going. If you could try to call at 3 o'clock your time or 5:30 your time, if that's a possibility, that would work for us.
Seconds remaining.
I will do my damnedest.
Okay.
You always do.
You always do.
Thank y'all for being there.
All right, man. We love you.
Love you too.
All right, on the move, man.
On the move.